Nerd morning, everyone. My name is Jeremy, and this is Joseph.
Hi, everyone.
And this is the Nerd Morning Show, a place where we celebrate nerd culture by talking about books, comics, video games, and a bunch of other things. And we're really excited to be discussing more Wheel of Time. We have been going through this pretty big journey to go through all of the different books, talk about the upcoming series, and we've got some news for the show and also new items to talk about that we've brought up through our reading. So a lot of good things here. First off, a note about a recast that is happening between season 1 and season 2. Now, this is sometimes a really big deal if you've got a recast
Right.
for a big character in a series.
Well, a big character, one of the top three.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Barney Harris wrapped up on his filming of Matt for the first season. All of that was good. And then he stepped away from the project. I'm not 100% sure of like what the reasoning was or purposes. But Donald Flynn, he's known from like The Witcher, and a few other things. He's going to be in that role for season 2. So Matt's going to be a different style of character. I was looking at these images of the two actors, and they look pretty different.
It's the same kind of person, but yeah, it's not like they found, oh, wow, you're like their cousin.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
different person, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I also haven't heard any reasons why.
Yeah.
Which would be just interesting, but he has his
ultimately
reasons, and
it is what it is, right?
And so hopefully it's not a Dumbledore type scenario. Hopefully he takes the role, what has been done, and builds on it. Right. Anytime I've seen a recast type of thing, you can be you can put your flair on it, but you do need to build on what's already there. Otherwise, that's where it's too jarring and people are just like, oh no, I hate it, it's awful, right? When you have that and you don't build on the foundation that's already there.
There's going to be a growing pain experience between season 1 and season 2 with that. Like there are a lot of people who are gonna be like, oh man, I think that Matt was so great, and now they've got this new guy. And I mean, ultimately, if the new actor Donald Flynn sticks with the project, he could be very much the Matt we know.
He could be Matt. Yeah, he could be like, oh, that poor guy who left, right?
Yeah.
We'll see. Hopefully they both do a really good job.
Yeah.
And we can just say, there was a change. That's life. We're moving on. Hopefully that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Something else is I found a really interesting interview. Brandon Sanderson, I guess, is pretty friendly with Will Friedle. He's done voice acting for, like, I think it was Batman Beyond. He's done some screenwriting. He's probably most recognizable from his role in Boy Meets Roll. And if you shout like Mr. Feedy, I mean, that's him. And that's what I was thinking about a lot of the time when I was watching that interview. But very interesting. And they talked about a whole bunch of stuff, but they spent some time on the upcoming Wheel of Time series, and they were talking about the expanse of the love of this series, how there are, people who are young like me, I'm going to claim young, and there are, people who are 60, who've been with this series for 25 years more, and they are really a lover of this story, and how it's like they're talking about how it's bringing in so wide range of ages and groups of people, because it's been so prevalent for so many years.
Right.
And he's the kind of the question was like, is this going to be good? Is this something that we should be worried about? And Brandon Sanderson, he was said that he was pretty excited about it. He talked about how he's a producer and that he's got to read scripts and talk with people kind of in the direction of things, that he was not the writer or anything like that. In fact, he talked about his lack of confidence in screenwriting in general with some of the own things that he's tinkered with. He said that if it was really good, just like think that it was me that influenced it. And if there's something that you don't like, think that I argued against it, which I thought was pretty funny. But he also talked about it really being the first book in this season. And I've heard some different things. And he seemed to say that, like, with maybe somewhat of a caveat in the tone of his voice. I think that we are going to get a little bit of like New Springs element stuff, a couple of details and things from there.
That would make sense. Sure.
I imagine maybe we're not ending right at the end of book one. Maybe we're going to go a little bit farther, or maybe there are things that they're going to try to thread in from book two to help set things up. But really, the bulk of the story is book one. That's what we're getting.
Which makes sense, really.
Inside of that conversation as well, they also talked about how they may end up choosing to group things in later books in seasons. And so that's also, I think, worth note in that as well.
It is. And personally, I think that's how they should do it. It's really hard. There are only a handful of TV shows, or which this basically is, a serial type show that goes 15 seasons.
Right. You can do that in a book series, but only rarely, and it's even more rare to be able to do it.
Definitely. There are a bare handful. We're not counting soap operas here, that just keep killing off characters and bringing in a new character. That doesn't count. Right. So we're there to be able to tell the whole story beginning to end. They would have to. Right. They'd have to make some changes and compromises and condense a few things, even if they cover the same 3-year time period as in the book series. They just have to do some chopping of some things.
So. I as I've gone through, I'm like, I really love a lot of this development, but I also kind of think this part here, this could be shrunk down a little bit, because there's a lot of times when the characters are having a lot of internal deliberation, internal exploration, and internal storytelling is amazing in prose. It's not how show works.
I've only ever seen it done and work once. Ever.
It's gonna be it's a different medium with different strengths and weaknesses, and one of those things is you can spend and write, and it's one of the common things with movie adaptations. You can spend time to write a 15-hour 20-hour book, but it's going to get 2 hours and 15 minutes of screen time, and that's what you get. And we pushed the envelope because we wanted it really to be under 2 hours. And that's like, that's the type of thing that you have in these constraints. We've got 8 episodes for the first season. I imagine that other seasons could be greenlit to different episode amounts. Traditional episode groupings you have are 8, 13, 22, 23, 24. Those are really common grouping numbers. But really, they could do whatever they wanted, because if they it's a streaming service.
It's a purely streaming digital service.
So
they don't need to say this is your time slot and that's all you get.
Exactly.
Right. That's not a thing. It's not broadcast television. So
they might have a target that says, okay, we need to do this, in 8 episodes, but then they go, this is really feasible in 9. They could make those type of adjustments because of the streaming situation. there
Yeah.
are ways I could see it as well being like, okay, we greenlit the first season, we produced it, we put it out, we have greenlit season 2, but we haven't really done work on it necessarily yet.
Right.
Wow, this was really successful, let's bump it to 13 episodes, let's take more time with this.
Right.
Or
Yeah. Right.
that wasn't as big as that we were hoping, let's keep it to 8 or something like that. I mean, they could spend more time if people wanted it, and if they wanted
Right.
to just keep it tight, like that doesn't have to be just popularity. If it was
Mhm.
like, wow, 8 episodes worked perfectly, let's do it again, like that's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all
Totally.
in the
Uh-huh.
possibility of what they could do. So those are
Yep.
some of the news and things that I had collected. Thoughts on any of that, Joseph?
Uh, nope.
Yeah.
You- we shared, I talked, and yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's good. Well, how was your reading this week?
uh, I did take a small break, I
Uh-huh.
admit. Sanderson put out Sunreach,
Uh-huh.
and I couldn't say no. So
Yes.
I got through it in a day. It was only, I looked at all the calculations. I'm like, okay, will I still finish in time? Oh
Uh-huh.
yeah, or I'm
Uh-huh.
gonna finish in time.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're
I
doing
I got
it.
it, and I'm
So
like, you're on my to be read pile, and I'm gonna
mhm.
be reading that here probably in a couple of days.
That's fair. Yeah. So,
When I
but
finish Wheel
I
of Time.
yep. so so I didn't get as far. I'm still only in the middle of Gathering Storm.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's where I'm at.
Nice, nice. I did read a lot. I feel like I did pretty good. I am in Towers of Midnight.
Uh,
I'm a little under halfway through,
all right.
and I am ah I love I just loved my reading experience. It was great. So
Well, do tell.
yeah.
What was great?
Well, I think what's really interesting about this transition between Knife of Dreams and Gathering Storm is we have Brandon Sanderson talking about this transitional experience that you can get,
Uh-huh.
the conversation for that, and it pretty much says, I am like a new director for a show. Same
Mhm.
actors are here, same team, same story, and I'm just trying to tell the story as best as I can. And I'm gonna not really try to like do everything the way that he like would write. I'm gonna have to tell
Uh-huh.
it my style because it's what I am able to do. But he's just
Right.
like, I'm trying to adapt my writing that would fit into the Wheel of Time. Like that's kind of how he
Right.
phrases it. So it's like getting a new director, but it's the same experience. And I think that's I don't know, an interesting trend, like contrast. I feel like really these read pretty similar to
Really, I agree
um
totally.
like I think
Yep.
he's like, oh, if it's not the same, I'm sorry. Like kind of like he kind of intonates to that. No way.
Well,
These
yeah.
land really similar. The only things that I think are significantly different is that he wanted to group some of the stories a little bit more tightly. And so our timeline is different in how it's organized. It's a little less
Right,
linear.
and that's part of his style
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
right? That's a
Um,
little bit of his style coming in.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you got the events with Gathering Storm that happen, and then you get the Towers of Midnight, and they're like, it's the same timeline. You go from beginning
Uh-huh.
to end,
Right.
beginning to
You've
end.
got the overlap. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a
Uh-huh.
lot. Yeah, there's a lot of that. And that's one of the things that threw me off the first time that I read the series, because I'm like, wait a second,
Uh-huh.
this already had happened. Now we're back, and I got really confused the first time I read these. I remember being flummoxed, and now I'm like, okay, I just love how this just adds more layers to the stuff that I've had before, and now that I'm
Mhm.
oriented. And like, oh man, with the end, like the end of Gathering Storm and the beginning of Towers of Midnight, like I get emotional. I get seriously choked up. You get the great internal battle, Dragon's Mount, and then with the Towers of Midnight, you get him walking down the mountain at the orchard and making
Yes, I
everything like
love that
flower.
scene.
Like I don't
Uh,
know what it is. I get mega choked up from those. It's amazing. It's fantastic. And it like I'm just like I get so much payoff from it. You know, this is the
oh yeah,
character.
but we've
Yeah.
had like 3 or 4 books of Rand being like this massive jerk. Like you
Yeah.
get it,
Yeah.
but you're like, dude, I just don't like you right now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he's comes full circle. We're back to the Rand we knew and loved, and he's back.
Mhm.
He's
Well,
a little
he's
bit
not only
worn,
he's not only back, but he's better. He's
right? He's now learned instead of
yeah.
just trying to, he's taken those moments and he's applied what he's been learning,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you kind of get him to being heartless and more heartless and more heartless. And all of
mhm,
a sudden, you give this guy with all of this power, all of this capacity, all of this strength, open up the wisdom that he's been needing and bashing his head against for a long time, and also give him a huge heart. And now he's like, oh, you know, these people I should abandon. Now he's like, I can't abandon people. That's why I'm fighting. And he
right?
sees the point.
Uh-huh.
And that's a
Yes.
huge thing. So I've been really, really loving those things. Um, with you, where you're at, what are some of the big things?
The biggest thing right now where I'm at is with Gowan trying to convince people to help him rescue Egwene.
No,
Yeah,
yes.
he's this lovesick puppy who's finally getting a clue.
Hmm.
Like, maybe I shouldn't be here doing what I'm doing. Uh,
Yes.
Maybe I actually need to do what I'm supposed to and what my heart tells me to.
Right.
So I'm just like, yeah, right, dude. Uh-huh. Yeah,
Well,
duh. I
and
could have
he
told you that 4 books ago.
right? And he needs to struggle with this a little bit longer. He doesn't really get things
Yeah.
figured out. Like even like halfway through Towers of Midnight, he finally is like, "Fine, I'm messing up here. I'm going off to
Uh-huh.
Camelin, and I'm gonna just like leave. I need to just deal with myself or whatever." And that's like I mean, he's still figuring that out, poor kid.
Yeah.
But also kind of with that what you talked about with Egwene's ascension and her battle, we've hinted to this,
Mhm.
and this is one of my biggest, most important parts of the entire series.
I'm
we
almost there.
needed we needed to discuss this. It's
Yes.
so important. So you've
Yes.
gotten to the point where she has
She is
she's been standing
finally
up.
said, you know what? You're stupid.
Hmm.
Yeah, right. She just finally says to Elida all the things she thinks and believes, tells
Yeah.
Elida, you're dead wrong. What? And she brings up even, what were you going to do with the Dragon Reborn if
Uh-huh.
you kept him in a box?
Right.
How would he get strong enough to fight the last battle? And of
How would
course,
he
Elida
fulfill the
has no
prophecies?
clue,
Yeah.
right? She has no clue. She just thought, oh, we have to control him and keep him in a
Yeah.
box. That's how
Yeah.
we control him. Kind of like the um, uh, Elsa in, oh, help me, come on.
Frozen.
Thank you, Frozen.
I was
Control,
not thinking we were having a
right?
Frozen conversation here.
Tangent. No,
Yeah.
it's the idea of control. It's control doesn't mean you lock it up and don't touch it. Control means you learn to use it.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and even
Yeah.
if the tower wanted to use the Dragon Reborn, it would have been better than Elida locking him up.
Yes. And what
Yeah.
I absolutely love is Wise Rand, post Dragon Mount land. He realizes the terror, the fear, the confusion, the difficulties that he's kind of set in motion in his reputation. And he uses that, saying, I'm going to go and break all the seals. And to get Eqwene to unify the rest of the world that he needs to have reunified, because he finally understands the way people perceive him and the way that people have tried to manipulate him and control him and do all of those things that Elida was essentially trying to do. And he being letting that loose, letting it go. We're gonna use, I guess. He has found a way to capitalize on that, and I just find that interesting because in his infinite wisdom that he finally attains, he's able to do something like that, where he doesn't like try to just bash in his will, which he ultimately gets less and less elegant. He just kind of hammers, this is the way, which is essentially
this is how you're going to do it. This is how you're going to do it.
Yeah, which is like essentially how the Aes Sedai have treated him. This is what you need to do. And that's what he was, you know, learning from them, which is, but he, I don't know, him and his being like having ascended to his wise, like unified self of his past memories, his memories now. I'm just like, it's just so cool. And it's so cool to see the comparison, particularly with what he was like a book before. There. It's just the night and day difference. And the artistry of it is fantastic. Like you probably have moments in where you're at right now where it's like, oh yeah, there's like a little bit of darkness. If you don't quite look at him straight on, it's almost like there's this dark cloud, and they see that flip that with a light cloud, like brightness and things like that follow him, and the parallelism is pretty cool how they set that up.
Yeah, well, when he meets with the trade leaders in Damon, and he has the thought, well, if she doesn't agree with me, then I'll just kill her and we'll get someone else and go from there. And he takes a second, he's like, wait a minute, have I come that far? I guess I have. And he moves on. He hasn't learned yet, which is where we get to a Dragon Mount. But how, like, oh, Rand, what are you doing?
I know. So, but okay, I'm pedaling back again towards Eqwene, because her battle up to that point going to Elida, because really after that confrontation with Elida, she's won. And everything up to that is just so cool, because she has been prepared for this by spending time with the wise ones, accepting punishment, even though mostly there weren't really physical punishment during her training, but having to just endure stuff. Like she learned that type of value. And then when she went and paid her toll with the wise one, when they said, I'm not actually Aes Sedai, and she volunteers to be beaten and volunteers to take whatever it is in order to accomplish what at that point to regain her honor. She sees the virtues and values of some of these ideas that prepares her to deal with everything that she gets. And this is a huge battle. I love it. Like, I don't know. Why don't you go through a couple of the big beats of that and some of the thoughts you have?
Mostly when she goes to the Mistress of Novices over and over again at multiple times a day. You know, after several days of that, we get little hints like she's softening, like no one would go through this unless they truly believed it. Crazy or not, you know, she believes, and she starts to get that respect. The little conversations and hints along the way with the different Aes Sedai and how she basically just uses the Socratic method.
Hmm.
She just asks questions
Yeah.
that they're a little bit leading questions, but that's a valid teaching style.
Yeah.
It's one of the best teaching styles. I've started using it on my kids when they're throwing tantrums,
Hmm.
and she does it so well that if this is the case, why isn't Elida doing that? Or would Elida succeed at this? What is the precedent for that? Did you know there's secret histories that have these precedents?
Uh-huh.
And finally, when she finds out through the other group hunting the Black Aja, that one of those who deposed and lifted Elida, or deposed Swan and lifted Elida,
At
was a
least one.
Praxis
Uh-huh.
sister,
Yeah.
at least one,
Yeah.
because it was the bare minimum, it negated the election.
Hmm.
Even the whites and the grays are like,
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
oh dear. So uh, I'm not quite there yet, but when the Shan Chen attack and Elida is kidnapped and
Yes.
taken away,
Oh,
both camps are fully primed to just come together and say, yeah, Egwene, you can be Amerlin, get us through this.
yeah.
Because she convinced them that she is Aes Sedai.
Hmm.
She has that fortitude, that uh, ability to endure what must be endured,
Hmm.
that other Aes Sedai talk about through the entire series. She has the knowledge. She shows herself to be of all Ajas a nun, which
Hmm.
I think is really the point that unifies the tower, excuse
Yes.
me, again, is
Yes.
she's dealt with all of the Ajas, and based on each of their standards for what it is to be an Aes Sedai of that Aja,
She
she should
fulfills, really. Yeah.
she is of all Ajas.
Yeah.
And it's just written so well how all of that comes together. Her victory through that, you said it before, and I 100% agree that just Egwene, good job.
Right.
Like that is quite an accomplishment
Yeah.
to be able to go through all of that craziness
Hmm.
and come out on top.
Hmm.
The the Whether you love her or hate her, you have to respect that.
Oh
So
yeah. Oh yeah. And who doesn't love her? She's amazing. So yeah,
right.
it's a great part of this story. It is one of the more powerful things that I think we get from this series. And there's a lot of powerful things. So
Oh yeah.
I absolutely love it. It's amazing. One of the things that drives me crazy is just how the Aes Sedai are so focused on these things and how the world around them is crumbling and they just don't see it. And
Right.
she's
They
like,
shut in and
yeah, and she's like, we need to
right?
unify. We've got a really big goal. This is like what we've been prepping for forever, essentially.
3,000 years of Aes Sedai going to this moment, and you're
Yeah,
gonna drop the ball,
yeah, like
right?
that was nuts. And
Yep.
I don't know. I think that it kind of happens in real life though. Like you have, political backbiting, you have big issues that are like a big deal for the general populace that you're supposed to be able to deal with, and then they just can't come together and take care of things. Like I think that that's something I see in real life. And these are
Right.
here, these ultimate
Yep.
politicians, oh really. Um,
Yeah.
and they just cannot see the goal in front of them. And she has to
Right.
like guide them so carefully because of their pride, which is a big
Right.
issue. And ultimately she just continues to maneuver them really well
Yep.
and leads them in an amazing way to the final battle, which is awesome. um
Totally.
Also, characters that are like real big, you've got Perrin, who has been traveling and having adventures. I've got to the point where
Yep.
he's like finally facing the white cloaks for the final
Ah.
facing off kind of a thing.
Yes.
And then we have Matt, who needs to travel to see Elaine and get his dragons built, all of that. I've got him
Yep.
there finally. With those two, like where are you at with those guys?
Perrin, I haven't seen him a whole lot. They're
Yeah, he's not
gathering
really
all their
in
resources.
that. Yeah,
He's in a journeying phase.
yeah,
Perrin's traveling.
yeah.
Okay,
We're letting him
moving
hike.
on.
Yep.
Right, we're back to Mat. We went through the one town where they're all crazy and kill each other every night, and then everyone's
Yes.
fine in the morning.
What a
Kind of a
crazy thing.
right, an interesting little story in there, just illustrating how the darkness is creeping into the whole world.
Yeah, the
Just a little
unraveling of the
story.
web or the weave, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
another point of I said, I guess what, you don't know everything, so you should probably listen.
Yeah.
There are a few of those with Mat that are just like, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is he wants to just like, come on, guys, like over and over again. But these people are like also like, like, oh yeah, you maybe saved us, but we're gonna take it over from here. And he gets this the entire way through. Oh, it's just so funny.
Yeah.
Though he does really get a pretty big reputation. I'm at the point again, now that he is over with Elaine, where he's walking around the city and everyone's talking about him, the legends of him, and he's like, how do people even hear these things? Like, I've told nobody about this, and yet this legend is actually kind of getting close.
Knows,
yeah,
right?
He's calling him the Prince of Ravens and stuff like that, and he's like no,
right,
and
stop it.
I think it's really fun because we knew forever that that Rand was going to go down in legend, right? Forever.
Right. He's the chosen one, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Say no more. We get it, right?
But I just love how Mat desperately has been trying to avoid his fate the entire time, and he's trying so hard to just like not. He wants to do the least amount as possible, and the way that he seems to do that is by saving the day over and over again. But he doesn't really mean to, and he's got this huge reputation.
I just keep trying to run away. I don't want to get stabbed.
Yeah, and they're like, I just like, I think is, I don't know, his legend is amazing, and the way that they describe him in myth, around in the taverns is really, really cool. And it makes him really awesome. I don't know. I think they puff him up to be this amazing character, which he is. He earns pretty much at all, but to just being told in a different way is kind of like, oh, that sounds like something from a storybook, and it's cool. I don't know, to see him grow into that.
And one of the things that I think makes him so lovable is he doesn't get a big head from it. Right? That could be a totally acceptable story arc for any character. Start doing good, get a big head, you have to get slapped down.
Yeah, I mean, essentially that is the Rand story arc.
It really is. Yeah. But for Mat, he's just no. You need me? Okay, fine. Right?
Yeah.
So
he's like his begrudgingness, when he goes and to see Elaine for the first time, he's wearing his like coat, and he goes like, what? This is a fine coat. And he says, yeah, if you're a farmer, it's a fine coat. And he's like, well, I'm a commoner. They're like, no, you're not. You're the prince now of Shanshan. You are nobility. And he's like, no.
Stop it.
I haven't quite hit to the point where he has the analogy of the shoes and why you wear your best shoes. I love that, and I haven't got it there, but I look forward to that every time I do a reread. It's like the most sagiest thing ever. I just love it. But it's just, I don't know, he's such a great character.
Yeah.
So that's yeah.
kudos mentioned to Telmanus also.
Yes.
He starts with Mat in Kyrian, start the beginning of the band,
Mhm.
and totally loyal, awesome guy. Where I'm at with him, he just survived this town with Mat, and
Mhm.
he's basically like, I was with you, everything was going to be fine.
Yeah.
And but Telmanus, he ends up being at least as awesome as Mat. He learns from Mat. He
Mhm.
learns to care about commoners, where in Kyrian, that's like you're
He's all
either
like, right.
nobility or you're
Yeah.
dirt,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And Telmanus learns this from Mat to care about the people. Um, he he fights Murdral. He survives fighting Murdral multiple times, and
Right.
I just really like where Telmanus ends up. So
Yeah.
anyway, shout out to
Yeah.
Telmanus.
Totally. I one of the things I particularly love is when Mat becomes noble, he's always kind of like snickering about it, has that little smile that he has, just kind of like knowing things. Like he gets a kick
Yeah.
out of everything about Mat. Like he probably is tremendously entertained by Mat
Oh,
all of the
definitely.
time, but he's also a noble man who is willing to not laugh out loud at somebody and just gets like,
Uh-huh.
it gets like this secret little like
Uh,
smile as he just gets a
and,
kick
and
out
he
of the
has
world.
the
Love
dry
it.
wit
Oh, it's
too.
so
He's got the
good.
dry
It's
wit
so
to
good.
poke at Mat.
Uh-huh.
He just keeps poking at him, and Mat's like, is he joking or is he serious?
Yeah.
I can't tell. And it's great.
It's so funny. Also as like kind of like the building of myths, I would love the story of Oliver all grown up. I'm just gonna say that this is something I want to do at the end after we finish, is be like, okay, what happens to everybody afterwards? There are no plans of
Right?
any books and things, but I want to have that
No.
conversation. So guys, stick around for other episodes because we are definitely gonna have that conversation. um
Yes.
okay. With that note, though, is one of the things that I think is challenging with certain fantasy novels is you have this great chosen one or this chosen couple, and they do everything that's heroic all the time. They're the ones, they
Mm,
do it all. No one else has
good
a good
point.
idea. No one else does anything heroic. No one else is
Uh-huh.
moving mountains, like anything like that. That's not the case. You have a couple of people, and they are
Yeah.
very significant. But like with the example here is with like Mat and Talmanas. No, Talmanas is doing a
Right?
ton of things,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's not just Mat. It's these people get
Yep.
honors and heroics on their own right, and there's a lot of things that are going on in the world, and a lot of people doing them, and that just
Yep.
feels good. It
It and
feels full
it's
and rich.
yeah, it's full, it's rich. It makes the 15 books worth it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just the straight up Rand story arc, that's 3 books and we're done,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Which is common, and not downing any of those. They're great stories. They're lots of fun,
totally.
but it's what makes Wheel of Time special.
Yes.
All of these different characters and everything, and there are encyclopedias
Mm-hmm.
of all of these characters and who they are and
Yeah.
what they do. And you need that because there are so many. You can't just say, here are the 10 main characters of this book, and
Yeah.
we meet a few tavern keepers along the way. No,
No,
it's
there's a lot of
it's
big
so much
significant
more
characters. Yeah.
rich. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So
What also kind of in parallel to that is we have a like okay, so here's I guess the example of this is like I do game streams, right? Nerd
yep.
Morning Gaming. You guys want to join me there? On YouTube, I go and do that. I did Uncharted recently, and those are still
Ah,
up. Those are still live. And
yes.
this is what I constantly be like, why am I the one pushing the thing? Why am I the one lighting the thing? You guys just stand there and I do that. And I like it. It just kind of felt unnatural in some ways because I literally had to do everything as the main
Right.
character.
The main
And
character is
yeah,
yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
this is, I don't know, this is not necessarily a failing, but I think a weakness in a lot of stories is it is your character. Your character has to be able to do the biggest of everything. They're the main character. That's
Right.
why that's
Yeah.
why we're getting their story. So that's cool. That's good. But it's not only them in that world, and other people do things. And this just does a, a better job of that than any other series that I have
Oh yeah.
ever read. So
Definitely. Definitely.
wow.
It's true. Yep.
Yeah. uh there are a lot of other things that we can dive in to, but we're probably going to try to like shrink this down for sake
Yep.
of time.
Check us out next week.
Yes,
We'll be
any
back.
other additional thoughts before we wrap up, Joseph?
Just so, pay attention as you read this story and other stories. What is it saying to you?
Mm,
That might be something that you can learn and develop in yourself. Are you the good friend who can poke and snigger and have fun, but in the end, you've got your buddy's back, right?
yeah,
Are you a Telmanis?
yeah,
Are you a Matt who you really actually you go and you get stuff done, dude?
yeah,
stop belittling yourself in
yeah,
this. You're awesome, right?
yeah.
Pay attention to those things that you're reading and see how it fits in your life. That
Mhm.
really is what helps stories become real.
Yeah,
So,
I love that. Yeah. There are a lot of good lessons that we can learn. And these characters, like one of the reasons why I love reading and love story so much in general is because it inspires me to be a better person. And it helps
mhm.
me to think about myself and to be more empathetic and all of those beautiful things. And this is a great exploration of that in this series. It's a great series that I just absolutely love. I will probably read it again next year. I
Right.
probably will. I expect that of myself. And I'm really excited for the upcoming series. It's really now just weeks away. And
Mhm.
that's cool. I mean, it is next month. But I mean, I can
Yep.
count it down like in a hand. It's like 5 weeks away. That's
Yep.
wild. That's
We're
crazy.
getting there. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm super excited about it. You all can find more Nerd Morning content at Nerd Morning links. Nerdmorning.com/links. And also on different social media platforms at Nerd Morning, like on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and more. So check all those places out for more content, and we will catch you all next time for another video.
Later.